If you're wanting your own unique human design forever reading, then you can find Abbey on Instagram on Abbey Rae Wilson. So I'll spell that for you: ABBEYRAEWILSON. We will put the links in the comments as well. This is unique for you to refer to, like I do most days. It will blow your mind. Also, the perfect gift for any friend, any birthdays coming up, family members, they will love it. It's an absolute game changer. Also, as a gift from me and Abbey to you, it will be a 10% discount, which will be Lindsay, LINDSAY 10. That's 10% off to you, to any of our listeners who want to get their forever reading. Enjoy, keep me posted. It won't disappoint, I promise you. Send your comments, send your emails, let me know what your thoughts are and how you've gone with yours. We'd love to hear them all. Super excited for this week's guest, Abbey Rae Wilson, who, it's fair to say, I believe that though those things that are super important to you or meant to be will never go past you. And I, hand on heart, believe without a shadow of a doubt that I was meant to find you and human design. The timing was just absolutely meant for me at this time, like a couple of years ago. And there's a few reasons for that, and we'll dive into that a bit more. But Abbey Rae Wilson, thank you so much for joining me today. For all our listeners, you're going to get so much out of this episode, so stay tuned. And finally, for those who I've already spoken to about human design and probably not really explained it properly, who have gone, what is she even talking about? I am thrilled to have you on here, that you can break it down and give people more of an insight. So welcome to In the Heart of the Vault.
Thank you so much for having me, and what a beautiful introduction.
You're so welcome. So let's dive straight in. Let's open that vault, as I always say, and let's dive in. Abbey, for me, and I'm not sure if you know about me and how my podcast eventuated, but always going to do a podcast. And when I say always going to do a podcast, it was on my, things that I was definitely going to accomplish. And it was more around about the 2020, 2021 mark, but life got in the way. We had an unwell child and just things, COVID, everything else, just a little bit more going on than we'd like. And so that was kind of put on pause. And then fast forward, 18 months ago, we lost my husband in a fatal accident. And so you can imagine our world turned upside down. But just going back before that, and my slight introduction to human design, which I'd not heard of before, and it wasn't that I was, because I'm certainly not closed off to anything, and I love talking deep and peeling back the layers and doing all that. But would you believe, was actually my daughter, and who was, gosh, how old would Evie been then? 15, 16. She's danced all her life. She's 18 now. But her dance teacher, bless her, also does a bit of a master in human design. So Evie would dance with her and obviously, had that and was blessed to have a great teacher. But also at the end of each session, they'd break down human design and they'd talk about it. I know.
Oh my God.
I know.
That was, like, to my ears.
It is so good. And now I get it. Well, I'm a bit more insightful where that comes into it. But she would get in the car, and the journey to dance school was an hour each way. So we'd get in the car and she would just be like, oh, and Kat said this and Kat said that, and that, I'm this and I'm that. And, she'd go on about all the energy types, and I'd be like, that's amazing, like loving it, that, she was so insightful, and Eve is such a sponge when it comes to all of that. So that was my first insight. And then Danny, who I adore, who, obviously Danny Morell, for those who don't know, but incredible, love his work. And then you were actually on his show, and I was like, right, I am getting into this. Um, so yeah, that was my kind of my insight, and I ordered mine from you straight away. Break it down. Let's, human design. How would you explain it? How did you find human design? And let's go from there.
Like, so something, the best way that I can always describe human design, it is essentially your instruction manual on how to be more yourself. And I think it's so important because we get so conditioned and so taught to be a certain way, to show up in a certain way. And if we're not fitting ourselves into those molds of what society expects, what the people around us expect, we feel like less than. And really, or we feel different when honestly, what I realized with human design, what it made me realize about myself and everybody else in the world is actually where we are different is actually our power. And we have to like allow ourselves to lean into those places where we feel like we're different because it's kind of what we're here to bring. And so it's not about resisting those parts of ourselves, it's about expanding into them. And so it's like this instruction manual, it's this blueprint based on the time you were born. And it is just letting you know, all of your qualities, all of your gifts, how you learn best, how your energy works, all of these things that are ultimately, if we know them about ourselves, we're going to apply them to our life and things are going to flow more naturally. We're going to feel more fulfilled. And that's really what the journey was for me. It was like a lot of people, like sort of your example of how human design sort of entered your orbit. It was
Yeah.
similar for me. This was 7 or 8 years ago. I was living in China at the time and I went for a Reiki session. And it was kind of my first experience with anything that was, kind of spiritual or energy related. And I'd always been open to those kind of things. But after the session, the therapist, she asked me, "Have you heard of human design?" And I was like, "Oh, no." And she, just like pulled up my chart and broke it down a little bit. And what was funny is I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then I just kind of like went about my day. And the next time I went to see her, she brought it up again. But this time it really pulled me in. And I was like, okay, like there's something here. Let me explore this. And I then just went deep into human design. I got the original textbook. I got a mentor. Like I went full in, all in. And there was a point because I was just like, really, I was just learning it for self-reflection. I was learning about it to know more about myself. And what I found as I started, pulling up everybody's charts around me and, starting to see people from their own lens as well.
Yeah.
And I just had this question that just came to me, and it was, why doesn't everybody know about this? And it was literally that question that started me on this journey to share it in a bigger way and to actually, start holding sessions for people. And yeah, because it just literally, I started putting the tools because I think this is the thing about human design as well is it's actually very practical. It's not just like, oh, here's this information. It gives you practical ways that you can, start making decisions that are from you,
Yeah.
start understanding how your energy flows and how you can listen to that more. And it started changing my own life. I started using human design and I started noticing the parts of my life where I'd been playing small, where I'd been giving the control to someone else, and
Yeah.
I had not been, like letting myself step into my light and step into that, I always call it like the creative director role of my life,
Yeah.
and understanding my own, it gave me that permission and that confidence to really be who I knew I already was.
Love
And
that.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I will talk about the I'd love you to share the energy types and give us some examples of that. But I certainly exactly what you're saying, I'm like, that is exactly how I felt. But not that I never felt self-assured before, but there was definitely some big gaps for sure. Like definitely some big gaps. Probably leaning towards more of a people pleaser, or I best do that because that's what I do, and just different variations. But my human design, which is like literally, I walk around like it goes everywhere in me. I and I go to it almost on a daily, with different things, just because you think you're absorbing, but I'm still learning. There's a lot I don't know. But for the first time, even given, so much turmoil and everything that's happened, but for the first time, I'm really starting to understand at the core who I am, which is just incredible. And it's almost given me, like you said, I feel permission to just be, just absolutely be. Doesn't you've got no one to answer to. There's no rhyme or or there is reason. Just refer to that, and it's like, oh my god, that is like exactly why I've been feeling that way, or that push pull, or whatever shows up for me. It's incredible. Um, so let's talk about the energy types. What are they?
Yeah, so okay. So in human design, we have, as you have mentioned, human design, it is layered. There's many layers to it, and there's so much that we can explore about ourselves. And really, I see that as a reflection of who we are as people, as individuals. We're
Yeah.
very layered, and it is a journey. There's what I find is, different parts of my energy comes out at different eras of my life,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, it's time to explore this part of yourself and really lean into it and let it, shine. And so the energy types is where we really begin when it comes to human design. And this is, I always say like our foundations in human design. So, our energy type, our decision-making authority. These are almost like I always say, it's like if you're building a house, if you're building a house, the foundations have got to be sort of solid, in order for everything inside of the house to flourish and stand tall. And it's kind of how it goes for your human design. So we always look at, okay, our energy type. So your energy type, it is your aura, how your aura flows, how it wants to flow, sort of what your energy says about you when you walk into a room, for example. And I think it's always good as well to note that, when people have questions about energy and, is it real? And I always say, well, has someone ever walked into a room and the energy has shifted? You felt a vibe. You
Yeah.
felt like something in the air from that person. Or you look at that person, you go, they don't seem themselves today.
Yeah.
That is our energy. That is
Yeah.
our auric field. So we've all felt it at some point or another. And so in human design, we have 5 energy types, and they are manifestors, generators, manifesting generators, projectors, and reflectors. And so each type, they hold like their own role. They have their own way of showing up. And what's interesting is some are more common than others. So it can like we can sometimes, and this is where our conditioning gets into it, some of us that we can, be brought up to be like a generator, so a generator is, the doer. They are like really creatives. They have like that limitless source of energy that they can just tap into. But, for example, a reflector, which is only like 1% of the population, they're going to operate so differently to a
Yeah.
generator. But it's a good thing, like that's
Yeah.
their magic and that's
Yeah.
their magic. And so it's always saying, it's about like, stepping into what your natural role is and like allowing that to flourish instead of pretending to, operate the way someone else does. And um and so
You could see how taxing that would be on one person actually in that situation where they're trying to fit in that mold. Even with our the my kids or anyone's children in a school environment or anything like that, trying to one size fits all would be so taxing and so emotionally problematic for each individual because of that. Or even trying to parent your kids exactly the same. I know with mine, like Evie's a projector and Charlie's a manifested generator,
wow.
and and I'm manifesting a generator too. But as much as we have the, like when I say rules, but we have, rules in place and we respect one another and we've got all the right values and things like that. I couldn't necessarily have the same conversation with Charlie and approach it the same as I could with Evie. And thankfully, I think I've always been aware of that. And I think I've said in previous episodes where I've always tried to be the parent that I needed, even though I had great parents. Do you know what I mean? I've tried to reverse it a little bit with that. But yeah, looking at both of theirs now, so you can see in systems like schools and things like that how some kids just slip under the radar and just slip by the way, can't you? Because just purely on that alone.
Yeah, and
It's sad.
I was a teacher for a really long time, and so
Right.
I've seen this in, classrooms. And when I first discovered human design, I was working very closely as a teacher for one family. And in this family, it was really interesting because I felt like it was like divinely brought to me because there were four children and they were all different energy types.
Wow.
So I had every energy type except the 1%, reflectors. But it really showed to me how different their energies are, how much they sort of need to flow in life to learn best, to, to feel supported,
Yeah.
the different ways that you can approach them. I learned a lot from, these four children. And it is like I think about it often, the different industries that human design is going to infiltrate over the next, couple of years because since I started in this space, it's only grown and grown and grown, and which is amazing
Yeah.
because you see, the results. You see people who feel more in control of, themselves and their life and, they're at peace with how they take in the world,
Yeah.
and then people are creating the magic they're supposed to,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
I love that. So how would starting with the energy type, say start with a projector, how would they, I know there's obviously different things and everyone's unique on their own, but how would a projector, can you use someone as an example of a projector energy? Anyone in mind? The
Okay,
audience
so
know?
yeah, I have a really good example of a projector. I love looking at like iconic examples. But Kris Jenner is a really good example of a projector because a projector is like the guide, they sort of see things from a really up high perspective and they're all about, like when they are giving you guidance, it's because they really see what the situation or what the person really needs and how they're going to benefit moving forward. So they're very supportive, very compassionate
Yeah.
beings. They're like, I know in my life that projectors even before I knew human design, they were the ones that I really valued their opinion. I
Yeah.
valued their insight. But they just have like this ability to support, like they see you from another perspective. And so I always think Kris Jenner is a really great example because all of her kids are generators. And
Yeah.
like projectors are sort of here to guide the energy of the
Yeah.
world towards more success. And we can kind of, it's very literal when it comes to Kris Jenner because
For
she is
sure.
like the manager of all of her kids
Yeah.
that are all, generating energy constantly. And
Yeah.
she's guiding them where to put it to create more success. And I
Amazing.
just think it's such a beautiful example of how that energy can actually work,
Yeah.
the
I
power
love
of that
that.
energy.
Yeah.
And so, a projector, because of the way they operate, because of the way they see the world and they're able to create efficiency, they don't need as much energy as the rest of us, like for, us as manifesting generators, we're constantly switched on and we're, like doing this and that and the next thing. And, energetically, with intention, that's correct for us. But for a projector to operate in that way, it may not land the same. And
Right.
that's okay
Yeah.
because something that might take me like 3 days to do, they can figure a way to do it in like a couple of hours, It's
Right.
just the way
Love
their
that.
energy goes. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
And so that when you're saying that, because Evie's a projector, my daughter, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's so her. But at the same time, she's onto it. She's such an entrepreneur. Like, she's only 18, already a business owner. She knows what she wants. She's actually my biggest teacher. She's amazing, and she calls a spade a spade. And she's like so insightful and beyond her years. I've always said that.
Yes.
It's crazy.
They're
So
like wise. They're so wise.
so wise. Always has been, even as a baby, had that there was no in between, either very serious or delirious, like just happy and laughing, and there's kind of no in between with her.
Yeah.
So what about a say generator?
So a generator they are the ones that are here to go towards their passion. So they are like the things that light them up and give them that fire and energy. Those are the things that they're meant to pursue in this lifetime. And I know it sounds like really simple. I'll be working with clients and I'm like, do what you're passionate about. And, you can be like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, I know that sounds really simple, but it is so forgotten. That
Yeah.
simplicity is forgotten because what a lot of generators do is suppress the things that excite them. Because the things that excite them, they could be like these little breadcrumbs of like, oh, like this book intrigues me, but I'm not going to allow myself to explore it because I mean, I can't see the outcome yet. What is that going to bring? And so they can suppress a lot of those things that excite them. But generators, they're the doers, they're here to really devote their lives to, you know, that thing, whatever that thing is that
Yeah.
really lights up that fire inside of them. And one of my favorite examples of a generator is David Attenborough.
Oh.
And I know, I just like, I think he's
Why
such a
don't we all
beautiful
just go,
generator.
oh, with David?
I
Don't
know.
we? Oh,
He's like, but that is like, this is something I love about generators because, they're here to give.
yeah.
They do come from that giving energy. And what I always say is yes, like because why they are givers is because they have the energy. They're the ones that sort of light up the rooms. They're the ones that, sort of overflow and give the energy to other people. And but that where they kind of get the lines blurred a little bit is they will try to give in different ways, like just giving their energy away, doing a favor for someone, however that shows up. But when they're intentional about where they're giving, they light up themselves and the world around them. and that's where they're supposed to give from. And I think, with David Attenborough, like I also think it's like an anti-aging thing. I think when
Yeah.
it
Oh
comes to
my
David
gosh, I
Attenborough,
know. It's
he
crazy.
looks amazing.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I sort of look at, he's had a career that has spanned like 70 years. And it has been, he has had this devotion to the natural world. And I think about, 70 something years ago, he maybe said, oh, I'm passionate about animals, I'm passionate about the natural world. At that point in time, I can almost guarantee people would telling him, you should get a quote unquote proper job.
Yeah,
You should, this is not going to go anywhere. I can guarantee he faced those projections,
for sure.
but he devoted his life to something that he was passionate about, and
Yeah.
it's probably why he's lived so long.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. That's the secret, to rewind that clock, do something that you love and just keep doing that. That's crazy. And so what's the next one? Manifesting generator?
Yeah, so
You're a
that is
manifesting
us.
generator,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Um, so for a manifesting generator, they're kind of the hybrid type. So, we are part manifestor, part generator. And what that means is we don't just have that, the ability of a manifestor, which is to initiate things, to get things started. We also have that generator energy where we can follow through on that and we can commit energy to this.
Yeah.
And so, manifesting generators, we tend to have a lot of energy. Our engine is much bigger and we're doing things that are, because we're so fast in our energy, we tend to pivot. We tend to, sort of switch things. We kind of, and where this comes from is we basically like complete things before others because our energy is
Yeah.
high energy, right?
Yeah.
And then we're ready for the next thing. We move on to the next thing and you know we're really expansive. The energy of a manifesting generator, it's to be expansive. It is to literally follow that pace within you and let yourself change things when you feel the call to, because there's something when you're in a room with a manifesting generator who is aligned, you feel like you can do anything. They
Yeah.
have this ability to just like inspire you to dream big and to have the courage to go after those things, and so, and this is why you usually see them, they'll be doing a lot of different things. And the likes of Elon Musk, Rihanna, like these are amazing examples of manifesting generators.
Yeah.
Like Rihanna, for example, she had a really um, abundant career. She was an artist and she was singing and she had a great career. But she didn't stop there. She was like, you know what? Like, I'm ready to move on to something else. And
Yeah.
went on to create $1 billion cosmetics brand.
Yeah.
That's like, it's so manifesting generator coded. Like, yeah.
I did laugh with sorry to cut you off there, but I laughed for those who are listening to this episode and going, "Oh my gosh, that's me." I laughed and I think it was Ebe who actually sent them to me, but you posted a manifesting generator cutting corners. Like, and they had the cheese grater over their face for those who are just listening to the audio and not watching the video, but literally the cheese grater on their face and just grating the cheese over their face. And I was like, even that, having got my own human design and reading it and reading it and reading it and being intrigued every single time, there's still things that come up on the daily. And I was like, oh my God, that is me. Like from being a little child, like reading, that's why I listen to audiobooks or podcasts, because reading a book, I'll start the beginning and then I just want to jump to the end. I want to cut that middle part out and I just want to let's speed it up. What happens? Do you know what I mean? All these different things, or I'll get instructions to build something and I'll go, right, concentrate, concentrate, and I'll read the beginning, and then I'm at the last page, and I wonder why I put it on back to front, or it's just so funny. And then the other one was with the carriage with the horses, and he had like 20 horses, and it said, you said, a manifestor and generator's interesting life, they've done so many things, and then all these horses are just coming one after the other, and I was like, oh my god, that is so me. It's incredible.
It is.
Okay, so manifesting generator, then we've got the reflector. Oh, manifestor, sorry, yeah.
So manifestors are the initiators. They're the ones that they're literally here to get things started. So how it works for a manifestor is they will literally get like these downloads, and it's like we call them urges in human design. It's like they will receive like this urge of, oh my God, I have to do this. And it creates this energy within them that is like all in and go, go, go. And they will get things started. They will initiate things. And then they're just like, then they will rest. Then they're like, okay, I've got it started. I've initiated what needed to be initiated. But really, they are the people that bring in the newness to the world. So they bring in these things that we've maybe never thought about, never seen. Like they're kind of, I almost say that they're kind of otherworldly in a way, because the things that they, manifest into the
Yeah,
world, they like really start us on something new. And so
yeah,
they're trailblazers, and so a great example is, J.K. Rowling. She manifested this whole new world, of Harry Potter. And,
yeah,
what's also to be said for manifestors is part of what makes someone a manifestor is their throat. They are here to express. They are here to, and that is like, we think about actually manifesting. That's sort of like the first point where we manifest, we speak it out. And
yeah,
so, they have really powerful voices. And so, that is, they tend to be very expressive. So, yeah, like J.K. Rowling, J.R.R. Tolkien, the writer of Lord of the Rings,
yeah. Wow.
Adele. These are all manifestors that are using their voice in some way, and that is, that power. Now, manifestors are only about 8% of the population, and so to understand a manifestor is to understand they operate differently to most people. And this is where, conditioning can come in a lot, because as they are growing up, and this is why it's important for kids as well, is as they are growing up, they can be told they're too loud, or, they need to be quiet, or, all of those things. And what happens is they end up growing up with this wound around their voice, which is their most powerful tool. And so, yeah, like this is another reason why, this is just one of the ways and one of the types that conditioning can show up, and why it's so important for our kids to know,
Yeah,
their powers, or yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And then, so then you've got reflectors, which is the last one.
Yeah.
And explain, or if so, they're just 1%. Did you say?
1%.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're like the ethereal kind of beings in a way, but reflectors, they are literally here as like the mirrors. There is something when you're around a reflector, like you almost feel a little bit naked, because it's kind of like they have a way of really seeing you. And what they tend to do, reflectors, is I almost explain them, they're kind of like a full moon, and what they do is like just their energy and their presence, they can really reflect in you your magic, where you're playing small, the things that you're hiding about yourself, and, where you need to, what you're doing right. They have a really like profound way of bringing that to the surface. And the opposite, they have a way of reflecting what's holding you back. you
Yeah.
know, and their energy and your interactions with them can really let you see that. You know, you can almost see yourself in them sometimes. And what they are these deep catalysts for change, for aligned change, you know, and for us to really like live like the life we're supposed to, you know, and Danny Morell is a reflector, of course,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and
Makes
so
sense,
he
right?
is, if you've ever, yeah,
Yeah.
like his events, you know, when someone stands up and talks in his events, he just has this way of like, he's like, I'm feeling like he feels things from people and he'll let them know. And it's, you know, they're very intuitive. They're here to tell the truth, you
Yeah.
know, and but they're also here to be playful with life and enjoy life. And, you know, they're kind of that example of what life is about in a
Yeah.
sense, you know, of us like tasting life, enjoying life, playing with it, you know, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's really rare to, you know, come across a reflector actually.
Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. And so then you've got like there's all different parts of your human design chart. So then you've got your authority.
Yeah. So how did you like what's your authority and
So
how did
My
this help you?
so my authority is my gut. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, just I knew that, but not to the depth that it goes. And so I've always said to everyone, follow your gut. To my kids, follow your gut. Even if you feel like you're the black sheep, just go with your gut. It'll never let you down. And every decision that I've made where I haven't listened to my gut is usually been a really bad decision or a poor choice, you know, whether that's business, personal, however that showed up. So I've always been a big believer of that, and that definitely confirmed that for me. So let's talk about that a little bit, you know, as far as authorities go. What does that mean in your human design?
Our inner authority in human design is essentially it's like your own built-in GPS. It is this sort of compass within like letting you know how you best make decisions, you know, how you're energetically wired to make decisions. And so, you know, we're constantly making decisions in our lives, you know, whether they are like micro decisions or macro decisions. And actually, this was the part of human design that really changed my life. And it was literally once I started working with a mentor all those years ago, and she told me I was emotional authority. And she said, okay, like when it comes to making decisions, you have to give yourself a little bit of time before you fully commit. You have to feel into it a little bit first. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, like let me try and put this into practice. Let me see if this works, you know? And so I remember the next day, two decisions came to me, like, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do this differently to how I usually do it because I would just always say yes all the time. And I said to the
was
people,
that,
Was that just to please people? Just saying,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I would, you know, like on reflection from this particular experience, this is what it made me realize. Oh my God, like I've just been saying yes without even consulting myself first. I've been
Yes,
putting
crazy.
everybody above myself
Yeah.
and above what I want and what feels good to me and just people pleasing. And then
Yeah.
that leads me into feeling frustrated in my life, you know? And so this, you know, this decision came to me, these two decisions, and I said to both people, I said, you know what? Let me get back to you tomorrow. Let me think about it.
Yeah.
And these people, they had never heard me say that before because, you know, these were people that I worked with and, you know, family members. They'd never heard me say that before. And I went back the next day with my decision, and one of the people said to me, "Oh, I already said yes on your behalf because I thought you would say yes."
Stop. Oh my God.
Really?
Because they're
This is
so
when I,
used to you
yeah,
saying yes to everything. Oh my gosh.
yes. They were so used to me saying yes to everything. And it was at that point that I realized, oh my God, I have been on like this autopilot people pleasing
Yeah,
journey. Like I didn't
yeah,
even realize that I was giving my energy away all the time and that, yeah, like they just thought I was going to say yes and because I always did. And so it was at that point I realized, oh my God, I have to like call my energy back. And ever
yeah.
since then, I've literally been, it's like kind of in my family now, it's like, if they ask me something, they're like, you take your time though, because we know you have your process and, like, so
But that would have taken a lot like a lot of getting used to, obviously for yourself because it was the unknown, and I'm sure that came with you being uncomfortable for a while of doing almost trying to, rewire the system, so to speak. And then obviously, like you said, those who were so used to around you, those relationships that you had, of them expecting you to just say yes, and then all of a sudden you're not. It's uncomfortable for them because it's the unknown for them as well. So it's just honoring yourself, isn't it?
And I think, understanding how we best make decisions, we can really see those blind spots on where
Yeah,
we've been, listening to the opinions of others or, putting others before ourselves. And, you
yeah,
know, when it comes to decision-making authorities, there are 7 different types.
right.
And yeah, I think knowing this about yourself it allows you, like you said, that you knew energetically that there's, you have this connection to your gut. And, when you haven't gone with your gut, you've seen like what happens or,
Yeah.
how it
And it
transpires.
might,
Might only be the simplest of it, might nothing major, but it might just be, say, going out on a night out with some friends and you just did not want to go. You just every part of your being was just like, oh, my pajamas, and like Netflix are calling me or whatever that, like, I just want to be with the kids or whatever that may look like. I just don't want to go. But you go, and then you're there just going, what am I like? Why? Why? Like, who's benefiting from this? It can be simple things like that, not necessarily anything major, right?
And I think as well, it's very common for us to make those decisions with our mind,
yeah,
and when it comes to the bigger things as well, it's, if we want to expand in our lives, if we want to grow, the mind is making decisions with our mind is not how that happens because the mind is literally wired to keep you safe. It's to keep
yeah,
you comfortable. And so when we're making decisions from that place, we're going to do the same things. We're going to but I always use the example of for you like going with your gut, an opportunity may come into your field that you've never experienced before and your gut is so excited, it's so lit up, it's like all in. But if you allow that to travel to your mind is going to be like, we've never done that before,
yeah.
we've
Procrastination
never.
kicks in, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it can talk you out of things. And so
yeah,
I think it's important to, the mind has a place. I'm never about like, oh, get rid of the mind, drop the mind. I don't believe in that. But I think the role of the mind is so much different to what we've been taught, and listening to your body, your decision-making authority, it's almost like a connection to your future self, It's like
yeah,
that's where your future self already is. And so it's giving you these nudges and, these sort of, yeah, this gut feeling, to be like, that's the way you want to go, or
yeah,
vice versa.
Yeah, I love that. And so the note to self theory, which is, again, I've got to look into that more and get familiar with that. So, but explain that, like, note to self. So would that be, is that your numbers? Number over number? I'm 2/4, so I'm hermit over.
Your life profile.
Right, okay. So explain that.
Yeah, okay. So this is where we really start to differentiate. So, it's kind of like you might know two projectors, but they're completely different. And you're like, oh yeah, but like they're both projectors. They're likely their life profiles are going to be different. And our life profile, it is essentially like our personality. It's like how we show up and interact in our relationships. It's, the path that we're here to take, how we learn best in the world. There's so many layers to our life profile, but yeah, like understanding your own, it can really let you lean into how you individually show up. And so for you, there's 12 different life profiles, and this is another kind of foundational part of human design. But it allows you to really deeply get to know that person in another way. So for me, knowing you're a 2/4, I'll know that, that duality and that dance between having your own time and, being in your own essence is just as important as you being around your close friends and your family and, really deepening your relationships with people. And for 2/4s, it can sometimes be like this
Push pull.
almost like this, yeah, it's almost like this inner conflict sometimes where it's like, oh my God, which one am I? Like what should I be more of? And it's like, I think 2/4s are great examples of balance, because they are this energy that is, you can be both. Like two things can exist at the same time. And so really, I think understanding that about yourself allows you to deepen your understanding of your energy as well. That you can and you need like some of that hermit time, right? But the relationships that you entertain around you are also really important. They not only create for a lot of fulfillment in your life, but they're going to bring opportunities to your door as well. And so really just like understanding those parts, it's something I, for example, weave deeply into my business and how I show up in my business. I use my life profile as that as that guidance, as that path in that. So
Yeah, because I find it's funny, again, obviously 18 months going through grief, looking after the kids and making sure their well-being, everything that goes on around that. But having my human design, like I said to you, I've really got to know who I am at the core. And I think a lot of that is you kind of close out the outside world, like nothing really matters. When something fairly significant like that happens, you really start to prioritize. It's like, I almost call it, I know this sounds really ridiculous, but almost like shaking the apple tree and all the bad apples fall off. It's just waiting for new blossoms to come through. I know that sounds so cliche, but that's the same with your energy, and it's so precious. It's so like daily activities can drain you when you're in the absolute thick of, something fairly traumatic. But understanding like that hermit and that opportunist with me, because I could quite easily get into that, oh, what is wrong with me? I'm usually, being a manifested generator, right? I'm usually got 50 things on at the go. I'm at the gym, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I homeschool the kids, everything's go, go, go. And of course, those things still go on. But also, I've actually, honestly, for the first time in my life, given myself permission to go, no, I just don't want to. Like, I know good will come from this. I know good will come from me just shutting out the world for a little bit and just being with the kids and just being where I want to be, and that's okay. Like, like I said to you in the beginning, almost give yourself permission, which is crazy, isn't it? I think, God, I've gone all these years for questioning, why am I feeling like this? Why do I feel guilty that I'm not wanting to go, but so I'll just go rather than cope with that guilt? And it's madness, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I see like yeah, it is. It gives you that permission and that confidence in a way to
Yeah.
actually almost like step into what you already know about yourself, you
Yeah.
know? And I think, in what you experienced, it was this space where, I mean, it's kind of when things like that happen in our life, we're almost like forced to, realign everything again, right?
Yeah.
And, so having that as that support, like, I'm so glad to hear that it really helped you and your family in that way. And,
Yeah, for sure.
um, but it's that courage to be who you know that you already are. And so, something I say to my clients a lot of the time is, like the things that I'm going to share about your chart, you probably deeply already know about yourself. I'm just literally activating it in you, bringing it to the surface, giving it a voice. And because that's how I felt, when I remember the mentor that I worked with all those years ago, she told me certain things about myself, like the deeper layers that we go into. And I was like, how does she, like, I've never even spoke about these things about myself. These
Yeah.
are just things that I've had, like, deep within me that I've kind of known about, but I've been like, I've suppressed because other people don't operate in that way or show up in that way.
Yeah.
And so it's this kind of like, I know that about myself deeply, but you're reminding me of
Yeah.
that and the magic that that can actually hold. And so,
And
And do you think also, like, I've looked at, when I've looked at certain parts of, or gates, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second, but where I've gone, no, that's not me. Nah, that's not me. And then I go, actually, that is me, but society, life has somehow squashed the hell out of that. And like you said, suppressed it, that I've actually forgotten it even existed, which is sad in one sense, but a beautiful thing that you actually look at human design and recognize that, and it's so gorgeous to actually be able to pull that back out. you know it's amazing, isn't it? It might be one comment or a few comments as a little kid that someone's said to you or said to your child, or that can make all the difference in the world. So it's kind of like digging deep and bringing those things to surface again, which is such a beautiful thing. I mean, what's the, talk about the gates. So you got activated and undefined, right?
so what I would just say as well on what you said about, things almost like when you first hear about them, you're like, oh no, I don't know if I have that. And then you learn later, oh, actually, it is there.
yeah.
It's like what I said at the beginning, where as you're going through life and as you're going through different experiences and different eras and phases of your own life, different parts of yourself get awakened, and they kind of come online because it's like their time to shine,
Yeah.
and so if you already kind of know that about yourself and it's being brought into your awareness, you're kind of aware of it when it shows up and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, like we can use this now,
Yeah.
um, so so the deeper layers of a human design chart, and this is good because whenever anybody like gets into human design, they will generate their chart, and we're looking at the chart and we're like, what does this mean? Because there's all these sort of shapes and lines, and
Yeah.
it's kind of but there's also like this knowing when you look at a chart and you're like, I need to know what this is saying to me because it's saying something. And so we have our centers. So our centers are the shapes on our chart, and each center, there are 9 different centers, and they are basically like portals of energy. And so They have their own themes. They can be switched on or switched off. And so if they're defined, they mean that the energy that that place holds is consistent for you. It's something that's natural, it's normal.
Yeah.
So if you have your throat center switched on, it's like, okay, you have something to say, like you have to be using your voice.
Yeah.
Naturally your voice can, kind of command a room if you like. Whereas if we're undefined in those spaces, it's not a bad thing. It means that those centers are a little more intuitive. They are the places where you take in the world around you, where you make sense of your environment, where you can see people on a different level. And so those centers then hold a lot of wisdom. So
Okay.
again, like a throat center that is undefined, like they will be like the truth tellers. They'll say it like it is. They will know, like really, they can kind of like be a voice for others in a
Yeah.
sense. And so that's a deeper layer, but
That's me, undefined.
Yeah.
so then we have the gates. The gates are where it gets really specific and where it gets really, really juicy. And everybody loves the gates because it's like, okay, like what's really differentiating me? Like, what are my like actual gifts? And yeah, there's
Give me some, what are your favorite ones on that? And just on that, because obviously I'm on your newsletter, which will give details at the end of the episode. But you send these beautiful emails out and you'll talk about a particular gate that day. And I'm literally in the cupboard pulling it out again, going, am I that? And even though I think I'm on top of it, I'm learning something each time, or I forget that gate's activated, or so it's all, and you just see it, you just talk about it so beautifully. So give me some really good examples of gates, your favorites, maybe.
yeah, there's a possibility of 64 different gates. We have 64 gates in the human design system. And one of my favorites is gate 27. And the reason that I love gate 27 so much, it is like this energy of people who have this, they're naturally very nurturing people. Like they're very, like they deeply, deeply care about you. And this is beautiful when it is channeled correctly. I mean, the shadow of it is self-sacrifice, and so again, understanding that part of your energy would be really important for those people with that. But the reason I love it so much is because I can sense it from people very quickly. And it's just, they have just like this warmth in their aura, this like deep, like they really do really care about you. And what is also really interesting is a lot of people who have that, they will work in places, or their jobs and their profession, they will be in places where they exercise that gift. So I have, worked with doctors, I've worked with nurses, teachers, just anyone who's in that sort of, that healers,
Yeah.
people who are in those sort of like deep care kind of roles,
Yeah.
that's like a really, prominent energy. And so I really, really love that gift. But again, like understanding it, it's like, okay, it's to understand the gifts that you have and how you can channel that, but also drawing awareness to that shadow,
Yeah.
so that shadow of self-sacrifice and, maybe sort of where you may overgive, and overcare and overnourish, and how that can show up,
Yeah.
And so again, I think it's like really, really important to understand that. So that's definitely one of my favorite gates, but there's so many more.
Yeah.
And so the one we talk about it a lot in our house, but the well, where
Oh, yes,
where
definitely.
we have that, and it is, obviously been big communicators but really love to get deep and peel back the layers and just have these real juicy conversations, that I find nothing better than that, than sitting at the dinner table, glass of red in hand, and just really unpacking. And but if you're at a dinner party or you're out, you just know, don't you? I can spot them a mile off in conversation straight away if they're gonna get, yeah, or they're almost, you try. I almost say it like, which is fine because everyone's different. I'm not saying it's right what we do, but it's almost like lights are on but no one's home. Like if you're trying to have this full deep conversation with someone who isn't this way inclined, you just can't have any expectation because you're just going to lose it. They're going to look disengaged. You're going to be frustrated, but in actual fact, that's just not who they are, and that's okay.
And that's okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But it's good to understand that, okay, like especially in like your close relationships, for you, someone who has that energy, that's incredibly important to you,
Yeah.
and it's something I see a lot, and I actually also have the well. Like it's a
Yeah.
big, I always say it's like human design was like my well. So I also talk about this energy quite a lot. And a really funny example that I have when it comes to this energy as well. So, gate 48, it's literally, we call it the well because it's like you want to dive into those rabbit holes, like depth is really, really important to you. And so my brother, he also has the well. And so he's one of those people that I can just sit there and we can, I can say what I'm thinking and we'll just start to like, dive deep. And, I know that he gets like my kind of depth.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of years ago, I was at home and it was like early in the morning. And whenever I'm at home, I'll, have a coffee with my dad. And I just like something came to my mind and it was something like, what do you think happens when, and it was like a really deep question. And I remember my dad just looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, it's like 7:30 in the morning." And I just started laughing because I was like, this was like so my gate 48, just
Yeah.
like wanting to go down the rabbit hole. And
Yeah.
so I just laughed
And
because I was
He's like just waking up and can barely put one foot in front of the other, and you're ready to get deep and talk. So you can see that miscommunication in, say, a partner with the partner, like one who really wants to talk deep, and then the other one, you can see that frustration and that lack of understanding. But on the same note, having the human design, almost like the languages of love to a certain degree, being able to understand that and work with that and be able to acknowledge that on a deeper level is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it's not like, like, okay, this like example with my dad, it's not, if I wasn't aware of these things, I could maybe take that as like rejection. Like,
Yeah.
oh, they're like rejecting a part of me and this and that. But I'm like, no, like this is the way I'm wired. And,
Yeah.
they're not wired in the same way, and that's okay,
Yeah.
because actually there are other ways that we deeply connect.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I know it. Like I said, it doesn't mean it's your way is better than theirs or the right way and they're doing it wrong. It's just who they are and having a better understanding of that. So you can. Is there anything else in there that sort of stands out for you in the human design? That, I mean, there's so much more, isn't there? I know that, but
Do like, I mean, this is going even deeper, but it is like it's something that is maybe for your listeners just to remember, just to take as like a little extra, but are I'm not even sure if you know about this part of human design, but it is your digestion, sense, and environment. So this is a very physical part of our human design. And it is basically, okay, like how do you digest the world? How do you digest food in a way that is most optimal for your system physically? How do you like, what is your most prominent sense? So this, it's like your spidey sense. It's like your intuition really helps you when it comes to decision making as well. And what environments do you thrive in? And what I love about this part of human design is it's very physical because I mean, like our most optimal environment, it's like, okay, like how am I curating my work environment to support me? When I'm feeling a certain way, what kind of environments are going to soothe me?
Yeah.
So my environment, for example, is what we call shores. And so what's really interesting is, I have always lived in places that are close to the water. And whenever I'm feeling a certain way, if I'm feeling low energetically, I can just go for a walk by the water and I feel like I can breathe again. I feel like, okay, I feel like back to my center. And so it's a really beautiful part of human design. And
Is that in the human design, or is that another, like the one, say I got the reading, is it an additional part to that?
yeah, it's like an expansion of that.
Right.
So it's like um an extra reading, like an expansion pack, I kind of call it.
Yeah.
And yeah, this part it's really physical. It's really interesting. And I'm a very practical person. And so you may have, when you've been reading your own reading, you will see like I always have like a practical spin on, okay, how can you apply this to your life? How
Yeah.
can you actually use this? And so I think when it comes to that part of human design, I think it's really interesting because it is in essence very practical, you
Yeah.
know related to our body, our physical body. So,
I love that. I did actually listen to something, it was on a podcast, I can't remember who it was, talking about the digestive system, which is really interesting, and about like even IBS and things like that, and with your human design. So it's definitely something I will look into further with you for sure. But again, like you go just on, your gut instinct in your brain. Well, your gut is your second brain, isn't it, as well? So that's all related. And if you're going, just using me as an example, if I've always been used to that push pull, or like you said, just saying yes to things and not really wanting to do it, and your gut's just screaming at you because you're just totally in misalignment, you can see how that can build up and work against you. So many people you hear, I'm in a rut. I don't know who I am anymore. Or say they've just been on the go, 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 people pleaser. They've raised a family and then all of a sudden the kids have left home, and it's just them and the husband. They've just lost their way, for a variance of reasons, or something major's happened in their life. I 100% absolutely believe that the human design can, it's not going to cure everything and make everything perfect. I mean, there is no perfection anyway, but it certainly allows you to go within and start to really peel back the layers and almost put those pieces together, back together again, that you've kind of lost and given away, along the way. Obviously you totally agree with that.
yeah, because this is something I get a lot of people coming to me for as well. I feel stuck. I feel like I'm meant for more, but I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And this is a part of human design that I use in my life day to day, because what human design connects you to, it connects you to like your inner signals as well. So those signals of misalignment, and it
Yeah.
lets you sort of start to let that breathe. It lets you see, oh, okay, like I'm getting this nudge that I'm putting my energy where it doesn't want to go. Okay, like let's reevaluate, let me zoom out and have a look. And it allows you to make the changes, and have that courage to make the changes that you need to.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us, when we do feel stuck, it's because we're applying our energy to things that we don't even want to do,
Yeah.
things that do not give us life, whether that be we're putting ourselves in environments that are unsupportive, whether we are, putting our energy to things that, or we don't have any boundaries, you know, these things, we can really see them in our human design and understand, okay, what are those nudges that are letting me know? And give me like that space to be able to give myself that space to be
And
able
just
to make the
to,
changes.
Back yourself, just to have that. I know for me and the kids, what's so important is just having that peace, that inner peace. And our home is very peaceful. I want the kids to, they've had the world's flipped upside down. I just want that inner peace as best we can. And I think from this perspective with the human design, if I wasn't really tapping into who I was and acknowledging who Evie and Charlie are, and who, with that, there would be this complete friction and this misalignment the whole time. So you're never going to have that inner peace. It's going to be that push pull forever and a day, which is just exhausting. So certainly for me, I've just felt, if I felt a bit wobbly or making a decision, I'll go to sleep on it. I'll wake up in the morning and I'm going to listen to my heart, my gut instincts, and see, it's never let me down, and follow that, and almost, yeah, just give yourself permission to do that. I think as well, just to touch on quickly with even with children, Abby, like like I wish I knew about this when the kids were born. I would have had, like, for sure, I think, and I have, like, spoken to so many people, and I've gifted human design to people as well, because I think it is such an incredible gift. And just being from the get-go, knowing about your child, about their human design from the get-go, like, I'm not saying dismiss the baby book, but have the human design go hand in hand. Because and even in the schooling system, again, just with my two kids, they learn very, very differently. And so you can imagine every single child in school learns very differently. And of course, they've all got different human design. In a perfect world, the teacher would have a human design in front of them for every single child. That's not possible, because that, teachers have already got the work cut out. But wouldn't it be an incredible thing if there was a better understanding? There'd be more learning. Kids learn better when they feel more heard and listened to, and peaceful and calm, and, however that looks.
It
yeah.
is. It's about feeling seen. And,
Yeah.
I think when it comes to human design, actually, they say human design is for the children, because if a child is brought up knowing who they are, and being like affirmed in their magic, because honestly, like when you see kids beautifully and naturally living out their design, it is wild. And so if they're affirmed in their naturalness from an early age, when they kind of get into that space of, going out into the world and, sort of starting to, be independent and things like that, they know who they are. They're
Yeah.
not going to, they're not going to feel as conditioned, because they're very affirmed in their power. They're very, like, they know who they are, and they're always going to have that as their center. And, going back to the example of the children that I worked with, and, the little boy in the family, he was a manifester. You couldn't tell him what to do. Like, and this is very like manifestor energy. Like you can't, like again, they're the trailblazers. So they kind
Yeah.
of they want to go their own way. They are, they don't like to be controlled or restricted. And when it came to, having certain conversations with him about like, okay, you need to do this or you need to do that, it was it was challenging to have those conversations.
Yeah.
So, but me knowing naturally he's a manifestor, naturally he's a leader. Okay, how can I switch this conversation up and, have it in a different way with him?
Yeah.
Have it in a way of, okay, like these are the things that you have to do, but what do you want to do? Which one do you want to do first? And, kind of giving him that leadership
Yeah.
in, certain aspects of things. And, just understanding they all show up so differently. And it not only affirms them, but it relieves so much of the challenge and conflict you might actually face, when it comes to,
Yeah.
Makes it easier for you as the parent. It would make it so much easier.
For
because I
sure.
mean, if I'm like sort of, oh, you need to do this, and I'm pushing this
Yeah.
manifested child into doing things a certain way, what I get back is anger.
Yeah.
I activate his not self theme, and he starts, he's not happy,
Yeah.
and so okay, and then I feel that, and so it's like, but if I
Yeah.
know he needs to lead. Okay,
Yeah.
and I want to empower leadership qualities.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's very interesting when it comes
Yeah.
to children.
And like even with, because obviously, like I said to you, Eve is 18 now and she's known about it for a couple of years. And obviously, literally her and her bestie walk around everywhere with them. Charlie, who's only just turned 13, he's, and a boy, he gets it because we talk about it. He knows he's a manifesting generator. Like, he knows Elon Musk is, and he's very techie and into his computer. So we have those conversations. But me as a parent, I understand as much as I can is human design. I'm not giving, like, he's got the book there if he wants to pick it up, of course, but he's not really that interested in it right now. But for me as a parent, and he's aware of it and he knows it's there for whenever he wants it, it just puts me on a better footing understanding him, and then obviously she's just, streets ahead of us all because she just loves it and loves it. So yeah, it's incredible. So thank you so much for today. Like, I really, really appreciate. I could talk for hours about it. Like, I'm just, yeah, I just just love it. Like I said, we've really just scratched the surface today. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for having me.